All right. Welcome, everybody. Hello, Charlie. I haven't seen you in years, although we just spent a few minutes catching up behind the camera. Um, Good to see everybody. If you are new to the party, I'm Leslie Feinzaig. I'm the founder and general partner at Garmin Walker. We are a boutique VC fund powered by a longstanding and very beloved, for me, founder community. We invest at the earliest stages in what we call pre-consensus founders and ideas that break the mold. Charlie and I have co-invested in a couple of my earliest investments were from Charlie, and that's how I knew that they were good. So let me just introduce you. Charlie O'Donnell is a seasoned VC and coach, entrepreneurship lecturer at NYU. With should I date you? Many multiple decades of experience in the New York City startup community. First analyst at storied venture capital fund USV, Union Square, and helped launch First Round Capital's New York City office. And then you founded Brooklyn Bridge Ventures in 2012. The
Yep.
first VC fund in Brooklyn has funded over 100 local startups, including many that you know, and is just a highly regarded and very influential guy in our community. Charlie, oh, most of all, I like completely forgot. You are now a published author too. So tell us about your book before I get you started. Founder friendly, unfriendly.
Founder Unfriendly. Yes. I have no advice on how to get a book published because I was very lucky in that my publisher tried his hand at entrepreneurship and wound up at one of my New York tech community events, decided that his idea was not good enough, which is probably what most people who think about entrepreneurship should do, and went back to his day job, but glommed onto my writing because of that, and then approached me out of the blue and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a book?" And put a contract in front of me, and that's the ideal way of it happening. Wrote the book from February until August of last year, and it just came out a couple weeks ago, and it's been really exciting. It's the number one, I don't say, hot new release or new release in venture capital on Amazon. We hit the bestseller status in a couple of different categories, depending on the day. And it's really written for the 99% of founders who are going to struggle to raise, who didn't just exit a company for $500 million and already have a bunch of people lining up to give them blank checks, which is most founders, right? And so it's been fun to do all the events. And one thing I was just discussing with Leslie is I'll throw it in the chat. We writing a book during that period of time, clearly AI was a thing, but it was not as integrated into our daily workflows as it is now, and it is becoming for founders who are looking to leverage their time. So I've taken the book and turned it into an AI fundraising coach. So all of the lessons and frameworks from the book, that and dozens of real pitch meetings, I've trained the bot to act like a real VC, or as close to a real VC as I get. Um, and a receipt from the book unlocks the bot. And it's been really fun to see and tweak. And most recently, I had to train it to identify outright fraud because it was accepting everyone's pitch as legit, no matter how crazy the story was. And so, somebody would have essentially some, snake oil type thing, and it would say, well, this seems like a lot of technical progress. And I was like, no. Like, look at the person's bio. They're a conspiracy theorist podcast person. Like, this is not a legit group. And you actually have to train it to identify fraud.
So I'm gonna start with something that you just said, which is like 99% of founders are gonna have a hard time fundraising. So as VCs, we are constantly talking about backing great founders. Um, but the reality is that pattern matching is like real, finding consensus is real. what are the patterns that VCs are actually filtering for that we would never say out loud?
So, I think the tough thing about this is we say things about backing great founders, right? And we want to be able to do that. So that like it's it's usually in the rearview mirror,
Mhm.
right? Because when you first write the check as a VC, you get excited about having backed somebody great. And then if the company fails, were you wrong that they were great? Or there are some instances in which the outcome is not great, but the founder did an absolutely amazing job and you would 100% back them again. There's just some things that are sort of, outside of their control. Um, I, the thing that I really look for is this founder great for this particular set of challenges? And I think that's really what VCs should be looking for. And I think too often VCs don't spend enough time really getting down to what unique set of challenges does this particular company need. And so they just sort of imagine this like monolith, this one particular pattern, this cookie cutter kind of like, oh, a great founder is outspoken and aggressive and all of these other things when like I don't know if you're selling into school districts and you're an ed tech company, like you're not going to wow the school district with your three-ring circus of a pitch. You're gonna, nail it with data and crossing your T's and dotting the I's and all of that sort of stuff. So not every startup requires the same type of founder, I would say.
What is it that what is the pattern that makes a VC um, just assume that this is a great founder and not take the time to or and vice versa. Like if you
Well,
match it, then you're just like so much less likely to give the founder an opportunity to prove themselves and really dig in.
yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's really all about trust. And because 80 to 90 plus percent of this pitch has to be about the future. It's you're not getting a fundraising round as a reward for the past. You are selling tickets to the future. Well, the problem is like, how do I convince you that I can execute in the future? So there's a couple of layers around that. So I haven't seen you do it previously, so I'm usually relying on any number of things you might have done in the past, right?
Mhm.
Do other people trust you? Do people that I know you, do people that we know each other in common, do they trust your ability to execute? As a VC, you're seeing 2,000 things a year. You're trying to pick the best five, right? You don't necessarily have time to go and vet each person's individual attributes or whatever. So you're using proxies, right? You're just basically saying, well, that data team out of Plaid was known for being, sort of a hotshot data team, and I'm going to give them a bunch of check boxes for their ability to do cutting edge things with data science because, like, I know of that team's reputation. What happens is you may not know that name your other kind of, the Accenture, this little data team somewhere else that was outside of the startup community is actually pound for pound, like just as good, but they're not known quantities.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing we have to be realistic about is that there's a value to that, right? That like, if I'm hiring a babysitter
Yeah.
and one of my kids school friends parents says, oh, we had a sitter, she's looking for more hours, do you want to use her? I'm clearly not going to do the same level of background checking and all this sort of stuff if another parent I know, like, that's just rational,
100%.
right? Like, I trust this person and all this sort of stuff. So there's ways where we look at it and go, oh, that's like an insiders club, that's a boys club, that's a, whatever, when it's like, no, like someone I know worked with this person before. And in a world where I'm supposed to pick 5 out of 2,000 and I'm doing 5 hours of email in my inbox every day, like people are going to use that. And it does play a valuable role in vetting.
Yeah, 100%. And there, it's extremely frustrating for founders that don't fall into that. Are there some practical things that founders can do to kind of create that
Mhm.
piece of it's almost like to make yourself more trustworthy and diligenceable, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like if I don't know a founder, like it's you really want to get to know them before you give other people's money to them, right?
Well, so sometimes I have been accused of throwing everything on the founder. And I do, actually. Like, you're the one that needs the capital.
Yeah,
This person across the table has it,
yeah,
right? Um, this book is not about changing venture capital. It's about helping make venture work for you,
yeah,
right? So all of the things that you could say is potentially unfair or you know mechanical about this process. It doesn't take into consideration everybody's individual talents and attributes. Well, that's a given. Actually, you know that's in the process, right? So now you got to make it work for you. And so when I hear a founder say, "Well, I'm outside of the typical networks," or I don't have access, or all of that sort of stuff. I mean, I just go back to like when I graduated college in 2001, and this is going to be one of those walking uphill both ways, kind of stories. In order to contact the alumni from my school, I had to physically go to the library, take out the alumni directory, okay, in which only a small percentage of the listings had email addresses, and literally write letters. The idea that someone today in 2026 would say that people aren't accessible compared to that is crazy town to me, right? That I literally I pay $100 a month for Wiza, Wiza, which is like my favorite tool. It's a Chrome plugin. Any LinkedIn profile, I push a button that is now floating over the profile, and I get the person's email address like 96% of the time. Like, and I can research using AI, I could go find the 5 podcasts that that person was on, dump them into Google Notebook LM, compose a completely customized, like combine it with my deck and say, hey, what you said on this random podcast 3 months ago in minute 14 totally relates to this thing on my deck, blah, 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 blah. Like with crazy accurate precision, I could write a highly converting cold email to someone with all of the context in the world as somebody who's been following them forever and all of this sort of stuff. And I look at that and I think we are betting on people to take 2 people in a PowerPoint to an IPO. And if that is available and you haven't done it yet, how am I ever going to trust that you were going to do this impossible thing, right? That the connecting to a VC, I mean, here we are, right? Did anybody in this group have to pay $3,000 to access me here in this chat, right? Has anyone in the last couple of months gone to an in-person event where there was an event? Like they're out there,
yeah,
right? You didn't necessarily graduate MBA with somebody. I mean, that's sort of a different level, right? But just the get the meeting level of access is out there more so than it ever has been before. And I think what happens a lot, and I'll stop, I'll get off my soapbox in a minute, is so much of the barrier is what society teaches us we're allowed to do and what is, the way that we can approach people. There's a guy who has been to three of my book events over the past couple of months, super nice guy. And he has admitted cultural differences in what he feels he has permission to ask. He's constantly asking me for permission to ask a question, for permission to get feedback. Is it okay if I email you? I was like, dude, just ask your question. Like, what do you need from me? Just ask it. And he's like, I really need to get out of that, but it is very hard for me. That's not the way, um, culturally I was educated to make these kinds of asks. And I think that is a huge barrier.
So, I I've also observed that I think the number one biggest change, obviously AI driven, but not just AI driven. I feel like it's also the kind of evolution of venture capital as a category and like extraordinary success in marketing ourselves to the world. The big difference between when I started my last company and kind of started what became the Female Founders Alliance and today is that knowledge is ubiquitous. Like how to do this, it is literally, you just wrote a book. Like there's like dozens of like these books and blogs, and all of us are constantly putting content out there. And now you have these tools where you can very conveniently ask for these to be summarized for you, right? So like the knowledge is now not a barrier. And access, sure, it's hard to get a warm introduction if you are not like BFFs with, like yes. But it is like VCs as a category actually quite accessible, as you said, right? Like you can go to
Mhm.
events, you can sign up for mentorship, you can go to accelerators. And now on the other side of the table, you and I, like, well, maybe you're not actively sort of getting inbound anymore, but like it, um, I see 2,000 a year, and that doesn't include cold inbound. That just
Right.
just like referrals and applications from our community. If I were to include cold inbound, it's probably closer to like 4 to 5,000 a year. So now the problem is, how do you stand out? And it's almost like as a category, as investors, not because anybody is intending to do this, but as a reaction of just like this onslaught of email, LinkedIn, right? Like requests, like inbound. We're almost like going back to the warm intros, even harder than before. So how does a founder actually stand out, right? Like how do you, like I think the problem is not it's no longer knowledge and it's no longer access. The problem is now how do you stand out in that sea of like
So I think a couple of things to that. So first of all, I think too often we think of fundraising as having a very specific beginning, and it is a beginning that starts with, I'm sending you a deck. And like, how do you get someone to notice your deck when they have 1,000 other decks in your email? Yeah, that's hard. And it probably involves persistence and, hitting everybody up on all the channels, right? Um, that's very different than saying, hey, Leslie, I know that you're interested in uh, AI assisted mental health or whatever thing that you might be interested in. And I saw that you commented on that, or you put something out into the world related to it, or you're on a panel, you spoke somewhere, or um, and you said something that I want to comment on, right? Now, I'm not even saying fold that into my pitch. I'm saying I'm working in this area. I'm doing something in this space, and I'm going to be working on finding product market fit and vetting ideas in this space for the next 3 to 9 months. As part of the development of this product, you should constantly be reaching out to any number of people, VCs, experienced operators, potential customers and clients, so that it isn't really cold. It's like you go in and you're working on AI in the service industry, and you as a VC are actively having conversations with people from KPMG about the future of what KPMG looks like in 10 years thanks to AI. And ideally, you hear about a company because that person from KPMG says, I just met this founder, and they reached out to us about something that we were doing as part of some competition, something, and it was really interesting. They had sort of a sharp take, right? Then that founder starts following you, and when you start talking about legacy, service businesses, they just leave a comment, right? And you're now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think that was that person that you suddenly you're hanging around the rim. It's not just this one shot, look at my deck, yes, no. It's that you maybe have 4 or 5 interactions with someone as they were developing. You got 4 or 5 smart questions along the way, and say, maybe they reached out to you and they said, hey, Leslie, I know as a VC, you deal with a lot of service providers, lawyers, accountants, and all this sort of stuff. I'm building something in the agentic service provider world. Do you know any lawyers that are actively thinking about how they provide services to their clients, or accountants, or whatever? You might be more than happy to make that intro. Now, if you get the full circle of that intro back 2 weeks from now, and that person from KPMG you introduced them to says, wow, Leslie, thanks so much for that intro. Boy, did that person knock my socks off. They're now on your radar. You're reaching into your inbox, pulling that deck out. And I think that is the pattern matching for the more successful, the winning founders. It's not the one who just drops out of the sky with a deck and you're hoping like, oh my God, this is the greatest deck I've ever seen, even though I've never heard from you. I don't see you anywhere in the ecosystem, whatever. It's that you can just like feel this person's presence around you, and you feel their motion in the ecosystem. Like that's what promising startup trajectory looks like. It's like all around you. So you can't help but notice that person.
Love that. So you wrote a book called Founder Unfriendly.
Yes.
Um, so let's start with like, what does it actually mean when a VC says that they are a founder-friendly investor? Like, what does it mean? Is it real or is it marketing?
No, they're not your friend. To get better friends than VC. Do yourselves a favor. Okay. Um, they are there as part of a financial transaction, right? Like you can become friends over time. Um, I backed Mike Brown to build a company called LogCheck, and we were just at his um, second baby shower, and he plays on my softball team. Like we're friends now. But he didn't show up looking for friends. He showed up looking for money, and I showed up looking for an investment opportunity. Um,
Love that.
the unfriendliness, the term, um, the best advice is sometimes really hard to hear. And the years ago, I gave testimony to the city council of the New York City Council about access to capital. And there were 10 founders who went up there and said, 9 out of the 10 of them said it was really hard to access capital at the time. And then I went up there and I said, what do you think the percentage should be? Like, you just 10 random entrepreneurs raised their hand, and 9 of them said capital was hard to access for their idea. Like, if 9 out of the 10 say capital is easy, then we're in a bubble.
Totally.
Because the bar should be really high for venture capital backed companies. And most often, the founder needs to be told some version of, here's the part of this thing that isn't going to work. Here's the part that is going to be extremely difficult, because frankly, they don't hear that from most people. I mean, they don't even hear it from the VCs who pass on them, who don't have the respect for them to just be honest about the reason why they're passing. And I'll tell you that like any VC that has let you walk out of the room without getting you a term sheet or a path to a term sheet? Like, I need to introduce you to one of my other partners. We need two people to be a yes. She's not in today, but can you come back on Friday and we'll all meet? And, anything else but that is effectively a pass. And I was just telling this founder the other day, like, you need to find out why they passed. Oh, well, they're interested, they're watching it. No, no, no. No, they passed. They could have invested you right now before you have proven anything while your equity is cheap. They chose not to. They are leaving it open for some other VC to come and do this deal. That doesn't sound great when you're busting your butt and you quit your job, you convinced your significant other that this was going to be the thing. It's created domestic stress, like all of this sort of stuff, right? And doesn't feel good to hear, but I personally think it is the friendliest, it is the most
Yeah.
respectful way to say, I value your time. I hope you're working on something great. If it doesn't feel like if it's going great, then maybe we should reassess. I think it's unfriendly and dismissive to be like, that sounds really great. That sounds cool. That sounds really interesting. Like, and to just let it slip like that.
In the words of the great Brene Brown, clear as kind.
Right.
Um, but having said that, um, I have an unpublished blog post about this. Um, and I have very specific reasons why I have not put it out in the world.
You afraid it's going to be too harsh?
Well, no, I just want to be really thoughtful about it because like my personal journey was like founder to community leader to VC. And so I basically went from being the yes person to as a VC, you're just a no person. Like your job is to say no way more than you want. Wait, like,
But you're dying to say yes, though, aren't you?
times like it is so against my nature. Oh my gosh, I swear to God, like it's the worst part of the job. And also not just because it should be hard and I want to, you should have like very specific standards for what you're looking for to be a good fiduciary. But I also feel like every time you say no, you are crushing someone a little bit. And that is just like karmically something that is really hard for me. Having said that, one of the things that in my own development as a VC, I've gone through this entire sort of like saga on is feedback and like in giving transparency to founders about why we are passing. And I feel like most VCs are just going to give you a polite like, you're a great thing so much, not that right? Like very rarely are people going to tell you exactly why. Why is that?
Why should they? Why is it their job? I would say to the founder, it's your job to extract that information from them.
How do you extract it?
Yeah. And I think the way that you do that is you take an old school sales training class and you set up your whole pitch in such a way that it is structured and meant to retrieve information. So here's the way we do it. So listen, I just want to be clear about my goals here. Um, I have written a book and I would obviously like to provide value, but I would also like to sell some books. And I think this book will provide a lot of value for founders who are early in their fundraising process or feeling like it's not going as smoothly as they would like to, or want, this process to be demystified. So I'll let you guys off the hook. If you just have 8 term sheets and your rounds are oversubscribed and this is the 10th time you've gone and done this, I'll give you back your time. You don't have to stay on this call. So for everybody else, do you feel like hearing more how to make this process work for you would be a good use of your time? And then mentally, everyone who's still on the call is saying yes, right? So now you've opted in to the rest of the meeting, right? And now I say, okay, well, the reason why I think this book can be helpful is it really explains a lot about what's really going on that people don't talk about. It explains a lot of the internal firm dynamics that you don't get to see in the meeting. And it also is honest about the things you will face, the bias in the room, and all of this sort of stuff, while at the same time creating paths for you to break through them and to not walk into them and all of this sort of stuff. So I'm like running my rundown, right? And let's say the rest of the time we just spent and I was like summarizing the book. At the end of this meeting, what I would do is say, listen, when we started out, you're still here, so I imagine you're not feeling like an expert in fundraising. I said that I would demystify some of the things that were going on, right? I said that I would be honest about the bias, but explain some of the ways that you walk. And I said I would do this other thing. Do you feel like I've accomplished that? And if I came up short, would you tell me, right? And if you say, no, 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 I feel like you did all of those things, then I would say, okay, so you're going to buy the book, right? And because the only way that you're going to be like, no, I don't think I'm going to buy the book is if I either came up short on one of those things or there was something else that we should have talked about that we didn't, right? But at the end of that kind of structured back and forth, I should know exactly whether I did what I set out to do, where I felt short, and all of this sort of stuff to pull feedback and made it like a conversation. Too often, founders go in and they're like, here's my song and dance, here's my tambourines, here's my jazz hands, whatever. What do you think? Completely unspecific question. The person's like, it was interesting. Do you know how low the bar for interestingness is? Could you imagine the VC saying, well, that was certainly not interesting. And you and your team are definitely not interesting. And even if you pivoted, or if Benchmark by some miracle decided to give you a term sheet, please don't come back to me ever again. Like that would be such an incredibly low bar, right? So I think you need to make it much more of an interactive, structured conversation where you're like, I tried to do this. Did I do it? Yes or no? Was that the right set of things to do? And if I did it, are you moving this process forward? And like literally less than 1% of the founders do that.
So if you're kind of putting the sort of the figuring out why on the founder.
I'm putting everything on the founders. It's
Okay.
all your fault.
It's like the lean in of founder books.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um,
VCs are idiots and you can't do anything about it.
so what are some
That goes for LPs too, right? Leslie, you have to deal with that. I mean, the LPs are who they are, and you got to cut through.
I think that I get very philosophical about it. I feel like for me the most healthy way to approach all of this is that nobody owes you anything. Like
Right.
nobody owes me money.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I am able to bring on an LP that I'm excited about is a miracle and I celebrate it. You know what I mean? Like it is so I might be yeah, I try to target only LPs that so but I feel like early in my career that would not have been possible. Right? Like it's like you just take money from where it comes. And a lot of the behavior, I feel like a lot of the behavior from folks who are the decision makers or on the money that you are looking for, um, some of it is true just asshole behavior, right? Like some of it is like, yeah, because they're in a position of power and some people get off on that. And yes, that is true and that exists. A lot of it is actually really rational. And so I'm just trying to like go down and understand, okay, what are the real reasons and like how much of those reasons have to do with me? And how much of that is just sort of that is just how they're going to behave.
I'll give you an example that I use all the time. So a couple weeks ago, I did a book talk at New Lab in Brooklyn, and we did a bunch of pitches with it. And so these two female founders, and just for context, about 40% of the companies that I backed had a female founder. And two female founders go up with One is a robotics company, the other is a material science company. Um, Both really genuinely interesting products, like really, really cool companies. Um, Thank you, society, but I am socialized to believe that women are not as aggressive as men. I'm just, I'm not going to attempt to deny that I did not grow up in this society and that I'm some special human being that didn't let that sink in, right? So I walk in with that bias. I'm trying to be conscious of it, but I walk in with that bias. Neither founder had the fantasy hockey stick chart literally stating in their deck, we are taking this to a $300 million revenue, $500 million revenue company, whatever big number in the future. Like neither one of them had it. Now, the question is like, why should I assume that that's what they're doing? How do I not, how do I know that they aren't sitting here going, if I could get this up to $1 million of recurring cash flow a year profitably, that's a really nice lifestyle business for me.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? And I'm probably not inclined to assume, given the biases that I have, that of course she's trying to IPO this company, right? And oh, by the way, there's an economic rationality to that because to take that kind of a swing for the fences, you also have to risk a zero. And who can spend 7 of their prime earning years risking a zero, but people who have some net worth? And where is net worth distributed, right? It's a bunch of straight white guys like me, right? And so for me to look out in the landscape and say, hey, this female founder, this black founder, this black female founder, knowing what I know about the averages of where net worth is distributed, is it a good economic assumption to think that this person is going to risk their whole earning cycle on a big swing for the fences to try and go IPO or zero? Like, is that a likely assumption if she doesn't tell me? No, it probably actually isn't. And then we sort of go down the rabbit hole. And it's like, and I asked them, like, well, why didn't you put that? And they say, well, I don't feel comfortable promising that. No, no, no. It's not a promise. It's an examination of the potential of this company. Ah, yes, but if she falls short on the potential, does she face more scrutiny than I do? Yes, she does. Straight white guy, I live in a consequence-free world, right? Like there's all sorts of things that go into that. And I think we both like just need to cut through and being like, you're there to try and win capital that is looking for a potential IPO. So you just need to say that's what you're doing there, right? All because otherwise we'll just get so wrapped around the axle around that interchange in the dynamic, and clarity and transparency about your intentions would help the process go a lot better.
Yeah. That's brave to say out loud. So if sort of in the kind of VCs are idiots theme of this conversation, what are some of the true unfriendly things that VCs do and why? I mean, we talked
Uh,
about sort of the warm intro and that stuff, and like I'm not going to be, but
a lot of them just have no attention span whatsoever. I mean, especially like if I'm sure everybody's here who's been on a Zoom and they're just, they're doing their email, right? Like, and they're just, they got other stuff going on. Which knowing that, right? If everyone like, in order to get,
oh, hilarious.
I mean, if you've ever gotten a 4-year-old to try and put on pants in the morning, go in your room and put on some pants. Now all of a sudden there's the music player, the Yodo player goes on. I was like, what does that have to do with pants? Pants, dude, pants. I go in several times. Pants. We're here for pants. You have to be that same way. Like fund returner, fund returner, fund returner. Like every slide in your deck. Can you look at every slide in your deck and say, someone could believe this was a fund returner based on this slide? And if you can't say that about every single one of the first 3 or 5 slides, get rid of them. You go in there and you say, well, let me tell you about my story. It all starts when I was an undergrad at wherever, and then I did this, and then I did that. Dude, I'm done. I'm on my email to a next thing. Like you've lost my attention versus, you know, we have 100 paid customers, credit cards in hands, and we haven't even launched the product yet. Now all of a sudden I'm like, what, wait a second. What, how, tell me, like you gave me some incredible hook to this thing, and now I'm like really invested. I'm literally leaning into this presentation. You got to keep it up the whole time.
Okay, so this is really hilarious because as you are giving this sort of lean in like answer, right? Like you're like, no, if they're not paying attention, it's on you. Hike up their attention by doing these things. Right at the same time, there's a bunch of questions in the chat around like, hey, when that happens, is it okay to call it out? Like, can I just end the meeting?
Um, well, so it's very interesting because at dinner yesterday I was telling a story and um my wife was looking at my daughter and looking elsewhere, and I was like, and I just was sort of trailed off. And she's like, I'm listening. I'm like, dude, it really doesn't seem like you are. And I would not say that me calling that out improved the quality of our engagement. Um, I did not win that. I think there's a better way to sort of handle it. And I think there's a positive way that you can do this. I think somewhere along, I mean, I don't know the specifics of the situation of what you were pitching, but I think if you time box the meeting a little more, made it a little more engaging, and I would say, listen, I get that you have probably seen a bunch of things before in this space. Can we get like, I know we booked this meeting for 45 minutes. I'll even put a clock in the counter. Can I get 3 minutes of your undivided attention or 5 minutes of your undivided attention? And you can tell me whether or not you think I've stumbled on something different than everybody else has tried to do this before. And we'll just make that commitment. We'll clear out all of our other things. And if you're not a screaming yes after that 5 minutes that you think I've done something different here, then, by all means, you got a bunch of things in your inbox or whatever. And like, okay, first of all, nobody does that. Um, and I think it has to be like time boxed like that. To like, okay, now we're going to spend the next 2 minutes talking about this other thing, and like let's focus on that engagement as opposed to this like 45-minute fire hose. It's like, again, to go back to my 4-year-old, a basketball class for a bunch of 4-year-olds should have a bunch of literally 90-second drills because you're going to lose them
Yeah.
after. And you got to make sure that they're not lining up 9 4-year-olds lining up to take shots where literally 8 of 9 of them are doing nothing for a majority of the time is a great recipe to lose them.
How did you sell the 4-year-old on pants? Did it work? I just make my kids put on their like tomorrow clothes the night before. I mean, they're all
Oh yeah,
like,
she does that. Yeah. So that's part of it. That is very helpful. We also do clothing store. We take out like 4 shirts, 4 pants, and we play a game called Clothing Store, and she shops for her clothes that she is
oh,
going to wear. So
nice,
that's what we do.
nice parenting, Charlie.
So I got a question about the fundamentals here. So I would
Like
love to take this one.
a couple in the background, so I'm going to make it more of a theme of a question. Um, so much of both the advice that you're giving now and just the general kind of how we coach founders to fundraise is like quite tactical, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
lot of like, um, a lot of sales, a lot of like creating momentum and creating FOMO and blah, blah, blah. And it does, I mean, essentially, this is the hard thing about it. On the one hand, it works. On the other hand, we're basically teaching founders how to manipulate the investor into like paying attention.
Yeah, sure.
So does the actual fundamental business matter at any point? Like, can you just raise off of like a great business without, like it's frustrating, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially for founders, because they're actually building this thing. And like,
That
baby, it's like crazy making.
I think that is very when you ask a question about fundamentals and is this a great business, it isn't a great business relative to what we hope it becomes. I mean, unless you were talking about that this is a Series C, D, E, F investment, it is a fraction of what it will be,
Yeah.
right? So the idea that we have achieved greatness yet is not even in the cards.
Yeah.
You should, you may have great initial data. You may have great traction for what you have been able to resource it with up until this point, but it is not a great business. It's certainly at most early stages not a business that anybody else could slip into and take over, right? So you can't tell me it's a great business where you're you know holding on to all of the strings like Loki and the timelines here, right? To just like try to keep this thing together. But talking about the fundamentals of the business to me is very backwards looking. Is this idea that I have created this thing and what I have accomplished up until this point will win me a raise, when actually 80 to 90% needs to be talking about the future and where you are taking this. And what you have done up until this point is often proof of what you can accomplish. So it's sort of like ages ago, this founder, Lily Liu, started a company called Public Stuff. And it was sort of like a 311 in a box for third and fourth tier sized cities. So you'd roll up to the mayor of Palm Springs, California, and you'd put in a microsite on their government site that you can like check in potholes and do all the other stuff and make suggestions and whatever. They'd whip out a credit card for it. They would look like really concerned bureaucrats and everybody'd be happy. She had something like 55 municipalities already sold by the time she came in for her first round of funding, which was amazing. And we said, well, how did you do that? And she's, well, I cold emailed 500 municipalities and closed over 10% of them. That's unbelievable, right? And you could start to extrapolate out a full-time salesperson who had experience selling into the space. Like, if she could do this much, what could a team go out and do and sell with this product? But there's no way that she would have gotten a fundraising round if she didn't start out with, our plan is to take this to X number of municipalities, which would be Y amount of revenue. And there are 40,000 cities in this country that have at least, I don't know, population of 20,000 or, whatever the numbers are that add up to this. And here's why they sold into. And the reason why we believe we can sell is like as evidenced by what I have done up until this point. But I think far too many people come in with a story that sounds more like we got our first 500 users and we haven't even spent a dollar on marketing. And like, this thing doesn't really come anywhere near an acquisition unless you get 50,000 users. So I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, the 500 is better than 5, right? But it's not a mission accomplished moment. And it's not to say that you haven't been working hard. I think too often people hear that and they go, well, what could you have possibly expected me to do? And I was like, no, that's great. But the problem is that somebody else in my inbox has some eye-popping number they got through some miracle. And that's who you're getting compared against, right? And it's unfair, but that's the competition. And so you want to talk about where you are taking this thing and how you are confident that the $1 million you spent on marketing will be spent well.
In the middle of a riveting story, too. Hope you're okay, Charlie. Let me know if you need to take a minute. Good? Okay. Does anybody have a question for me? Put them in the chat. We only have a few minutes left. Better?
This is also the problem of having a 4-year-old at home. Just whatever germs,
The
it's like
germs? Yeah, totally.
human petri dish. Yeah. Okay,
Gross.
now I'm good.
Okay, so we are running up against time and I have like a spicy question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So what is the most founder unfriendly thing that you have done in your 20 years as a VC? What do you wish
I
that
mean, the meanest thing I think I've ever said. I saw this founder 3 or 4 times over the course of a year. He was effectively just going head to head against Amazon. There's no other way to say it. And I just could not bear to watch him at another pitch competition. And he had no co-founder, no traction. And I got up and I said, I am closer to funding you to do anything else but this than I am to writing you a check for this. Like, you have to stop doing this, right? And the whole room just jaws dropped. But I just could not believe that this person had a friend in the world, that they would just let him go off on this white whale, mission to go and do this. So yeah, I think that. And also, only one time in my career have I actually said to a founder that they specifically are the reason why I'm not investing. That,
ah,
like, just because I kind of
that's
like,
hard.
and I really actually struggled with it because the founder was a little bit older, and I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, do I have a bias here? And I thought about it a while, and I took a few extra meetings with him, and I was like, no, this guy's just kind of an asshole, actually. I don't think anyone's going to want to work with him, and not because he's older, just because he's kind of prickly. And I don't think he would be fun to work with. And I tried to blow smoke a couple of times. I tried to say, I really got into the business model. I thought it was an interesting business. I tried to make up some reasons why I wasn't investing because I just didn't want to go down that route. And he didn't buy it. He actually just sort of called me. I was like, that's not why you're not investing. You don't believe that. And I was like, okay, dude, it's you. I honestly haven't enjoyed these interactions at all. I think you're going to struggle to hold on to a team. This has not been fun for me, and I just don't want to work with you, and I don't think other people are going to want to work with you either. He was not real happy about that.
Yeah. How'd he react?
Um, I think I sort of blocked it out of my mind, and, like, he didn't hang up. He had a very curt response. Um, so yeah, I think, like, um, no, he didn't react well, but interestingly, that inadvertently helped create Doctronic, because the two co-founders of Doctronic were actually advising that company. And one of them, Matt, brought it up to me that they were advising that company. I was like, oh my God, that company's still around. And I was like, I didn't want to badmouth the original founder, but I had said to him, I don't want to throw myself on the tracks, but you need to do your due diligence. That guy had co-founders before. You need to go track them down and just talk to them. And Matt came back and was like, oh my God, I just dodged the biggest bullet ever. Like, he did his homework. And then he wound up partnering up with one of the other advisors, and that became Doctronic. So those two guys would be still stuck on that thing if I hadn't said anything. But there's a question in the chat about society's bias against women, how would you suggest we use those biases to our advantage? Um, I'd be really specific about the bias that you're talking about. And are we talking about the bias that they are not risk takers? Is it the bias about aggressiveness? Is it there's any number of biases that we would be very specific on? And I think you need to confront those biases headlong and show versus tell, right? And so, or even just go back to the age thing for a minute. Um, if you are an older founder, like, please don't send me a PowerPoint deck like that opens the power, like a Windows PowerPoint deck that opens on my computer and all the fonts go haywire and the word wrapping goes berserk. And like, it seems so petty. But if you already know that you have like one extra layer of bias that somebody who's just some 22-year-old doesn't have, why play into that? Like, yes, it is an extra cognitive and emotional burden to have to deal with that they don't, and that sucks. But it is just sort of, reality. And so that also means that, like, you know, if you're a female founder and somebody already has that bias, and if I say, oh, have you talked to so and so about that, you don't want to be get caught saying, yeah, I have a couple of connections to them, but they're not strong introductions. Or, yeah, I reached out, but I didn't hear anything back. Or like that kind of thing is the implicit red flag that's like, oh, so there's this critical key person that would be an absolutely killer angel investor or connection for your business, and you emailed them once and never followed up. Like, that's going to work against you in that meeting more so than it would work against a guy. But you have to be really conscious of that, because this is the kind of thing the VC sitting there going, if I were invested in you and you could close an enterprise deal by forcing somebody to get in front of your face and you just emailed them once and never emailed them again, like, we'd fail. And so I wouldn't bet on you if that's the way you operate that business. It's unfair, but it is also like, think about the rationality that it plays on the part of the investors. What I don't believe, by the way, if you are in the meeting, I don't believe that VCs give away meetings for free. I don't think they are in the business of giving pitch practice to people. And so while a VC always they're generally saying no, I think most VCs hope that you're the one. At the moment that meeting begins, they're like, wouldn't I be damn lucky if this was the thing that just bells, whistles, screaming fund returner, right? And I don't really care who it is that does this. I hope that next founder that comes in is a screaming fund returner. So by getting that meeting, there's a chance that they think that. And I think you have to approach it with that perspective.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it is completely true. And every time you take in a meeting, that could be the one. Um, and yeah, like, we just want you to show us. Charlie, I thought that this conversation was going to go in a totally different direction, but this was incredibly refreshing.
Now you know why I don't do panel prep calls.
Well, we usually do panel prep calls for the technology side because we usually do these on Substack Live, and that throws people off.
Okay.
But since this one was on Zoom, I let you.
I didn't even know Substack had a live tool.
Yeah, it does. It only really works if the other person has Substack.
Oh, okay.
I don't really do it anymore unless the other person is also a Substacker.
Gotcha.
You start a Substack, we can do one over there next time around. It is lovely to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much for your
for
time.
making the time.
Founders, thank you so much for spending an hour of your time with us. Hopefully you got a lot more out of it than what you put in. And we will share the recording and some insights in our newsletter afterwards and in a direct email to everybody who registered for this session. I'll be back in June. Haven't announced the speaker for June, but that is coming really soon.
Grab
And
the book.
Founder Unfriendly,
Oh, can I share one? Hold on, one quick thing. So the best page in the book
best page in the
is
book.
page 220.
Okay.
Oh, what's going on here? Is so my daughter came up to me while I was writing, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm writing the book." She goes, "Can I see?" And then she says, "Where are the pictures?" And I said, "Well, it's kind of a mommy and daddy book. It doesn't really have pictures." She goes, "Well, I think it should have pictures." I said, "Well, if you give me a picture, I will make sure there's a picture in the book."
Oh, yeah.
And I said it has to be black and white, but these are ghosts investors who are ghosting you. And it is in the section about how to
Shut
interpret
up.
VC feedback. It
So
is totally in context. And they are busy flying their ghost kites, and it is drawn by my daughter. And
I
she was doing a book signing like the other day, and I honestly could have brought 30 books, and I would have gotten rid of all of them.
Well, everybody, we will figure out a way to get you to get a signed copy of Charlie's book. How about that?
There you go.
And include details on how to contact us and how to follow up with Charlie afterwards.
All
Thank you
right.
so much
Good
for your
time,
time.
everyone.
It's
Have a
great to
good day.
see you, Charlie.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.